So here's the new chicken coop. Mushroom harvest has been pretty crazy this year. Here's a patch I just can't keep up with, just producing so much. And it is the morning and I'm just out here trying to get some fresh ones for my eggs. But I just can't keep up with this. Every day I pick. And because I've been spreading them everywhere, they're popping up everywhere. It's just food popping up everywhere. We're going to show you a quick little update of the annual garden, and then we'll pop over and show you some chickens and maybe some other stuff, we'll see. But here's the tomatoes in the boxes so far, and they're doing fantastic. So this is all with my next level compost. You can see there's biochar in here. These are some big pieces that didn't get crushed up, but usually I crush these up quite a bit more. And the biochar doesn't just go straight into here, right? The biochar actually enters into the composting system. You really want to get the biochar in your compost. I go on all these tangents, I know, I'm really sorry. You really want to get the biochar in the compost when the compost is still decomposing, and you get something called a carbon slime on it. And that carbon slime is actually what creates the bonding sites for the nutrients for the compost, or for the biochar to act as a nutrient soak and a nutrient battery, and helps it release it back to the plants. So if you just put biochar in finished compost, you don't quite get the same result. And this is a lot of research that's been done lately that's kind of pointing towards that. So anyways, we've got the corn, which doesn't look like it's germinating. And I mentioned before in my videos that this corner of the garden has been dead for years. And this is in one of my greatest mistakes video, when I got horse manure from someone that I didn't ask them if they use any kind of dewormers and herbicides on the hay fields. And I'm very, very confident after seeing this again for, the third or fourth year, that we can't get corn or anything to grow in this area. I'm very confident that we've got aminopyralid poisoning here. So if you don't know what this is, check out my video on aminopyralid poisoning, and I'll link it here. Definitely be aware of it, because this is years later and we still are having a hard time growing stuff. The rest of the garden, not so much. The rest of the garden is doing fantastic. And with these potato beds, what we're going to do is take some compost and fill up as the plants grow, and hopefully the potatoes being in the nightshade family, they will actually root adventitiously. They have these things called adventitious roots, and they'll actually root into that soil and then put tubers in even further. This is why we kind of trench potatoes, plant them, and then hill them up as they grow. So we're going to try to replicate common normal agriculture farming practices that are sustainable, like the good practices they do. We're going to incorporate those as well here. So you can see a lot of the squash are starting to really pick up and spread out. We're going to train that down along this path. A lot of the tomatoes are really doing really well. We've got some squash that are just choosing that they didn't actually want to recover. We're not sure entirely what's making this guy unhappy. He's sending out another runner here. It might do all right, but that'll happen. Some plants will do well, some others won't, and we've got lots that are doing really well. And we were going to have to start maybe tying these tomatoes to the cage, or running some of the leaves through the cage to kind of hold them there, because we do really want the tomato staying up and getting on this cage. Once it gets to this big thing, I can really weave it through and then create a wall of tomatoes back here. So this is the annual garden, and we have been eating from our perennials still. We take from this sorrel patch pretty much non-stop, and it just, for some reason, doesn't ever look like it. And look at this. This is why I garden the way I do. Sorry for the focus. I can't get it to focus on it. This is why I garden the way I do, is you get all these wonderful predators showing up, keeping everything safe, hanging out on the plant that I would probably naturally want to remove Queen Anne's lace or wild carrot. So typically people would see that and say, ooh, a weed. I leave it, and now I've got predators hanging out in my annual garden. So this is why we do things the way we do. And we overplanted. As anyone who knows planted squash, you know, we clearly overplanted how many squash and cucumbers and large plant zucchinis that we have in close proximity. We did that specifically for this reason. So this is why I like to overplant stuff and then thin out the losers and let the winners win. That's my philosophy anyways. And then we've got this kale here that we transplanted. I didn't think it would do very well at all because it was kind of weak, and we transplanted it over and it's putting on tons of seed. So we'll let this reseed in this area as well, so we get some perennial or at least very, very quickly, readily sowing biennials growing in this food forest. I always love it when winter ends and in April, March, when people are just starting their seeds, we've already got food growing that we can eat. And we've already got some tomatoes coming. Okay, so let's do the rest of the follow-ups. I've spent too long on the annual garden, and we'll go check out the other stuff. Another thing I like to do on this channel is be your warning. I want to act as like an alarm clock for you guys. So I'm going to show you something that you should be doing right now in your own food forests. Now this is something I was doing just today in the morning, and I thought, oh, I'll maybe grab my camera and do a video. So make sure that you are going around and you are pruning, and sorry, not pruning, thinning your fruit. Make sure you're checking out how often your fruit are showing up, how tightly dense and packed they are, and specifically also how far down the branch they are, and the weight of the branch. Take into account how much fruit can each branch grow and how much space does each peach, for example, need. So give each peach room to grow and get into a nice big peach. You'll get fewer peaches when you pull peaches like this, but you'll get more of them. You know, here's a good example. Those are two quite big peaches, and I want to leave them all because I want lots of peaches, but I'll get a better peach if I pull this one off. And learn the lesson that I did last year about keeping the length of your branches back, and keeping, you know, you want a nice thick branch. You want nice thick scaffold and supports for your plants so that they can support the fruit, because as you can see on this tree here, I lost kind of half my tree when it cracked last year because it produced too much fruit. And especially if you grow in really sustainable ways with lots of soil building, nutrient accumulators that you're chopping and dropping constantly, you know, if you're adding you know the nice yellow liquid gold that we all produce, if you're adding that to your food forest systems, you can get a lot of growth, and you really want to make sure that that the plant can handle that. So make sure that you're checking for a few things. Like I come out all the time and I check for any more of this leaf curl, and I pull off those leaves, and if I stay on top of it, then my plant won't lose them all. So a lot of people will lose every single leaf to leaf curl, and that really stresses the tree out. But you can see that most of these are actually fine, and it's because I'm staying on top of it. It's not that I don't have it. I do have it, but I'm staying on top of it, and I'm pulling them off before it gets bad, especially if you know it's going to rain. So those are the two main things that I'm doing right now in terms of human inputs into my food forest system. I'm keeping the leaf curl off my peaches, and I'm thinning the fruit out. And I'm checking for, you know, is a tiny little branch holding a peach? You know, maybe it can hold the one. That one might be okay. This one can hold the one, but any more than that would very much be pushing it. And then the whole branch, how far out does it jut? You know, we're really talking about torques here. We're not talking about static loading weights. We're talking about static loading a torque. So distance from the rotation point is really important, where the weight is placed. If the weight is on the end of the branch, that's going to have a tremendous impact on how far that branch deflects. If the weight is up at the front of the branch, very, very much less so. The force on the branch at the inflection point, at the connection point, is going to be the weight times the distance. So if you're putting that weight at a very far distance, then you know the two things multiply together to give you that torque, and that's the thing that you want to avoid. So you can have, you know, double the weight at half the distance, or you can have half the weight at double the distance. You can pick. But if you go over what the tree can do, like I did last year on both of these trees, then the trees will crack and split, and then you've got a giant wound that's going to take the tree a long time to survive. I actually didn't even know if this tree would survive and produce fruit. I'm thankful that it is, and it has, but you know, only out of dumb luck, because even though I thinned out last year, we set so many fruit last year that I thinned probably 80% of the fruit off. But because I was fairly new to this, you know, at least the how much fruit can a peach tree hold side of the coin, even though I'm new to that, I didn't really know how much to thin. I should have thinned out 95%, not just 80. This year we got a more reasonable fruit set, and I'm much more confident on what this tree can actually bear. And I've also pulled back. You can see I've made pruning cuts. Pretty much all of the branches, just to keep their lengths in check, so that I don't have any problems with more cracked limbs. That's the last thing that these trees need. So here's the new chicken coop, and we've kind of slid it in place as far as we can. Maybe I'll go down and show you that, and show you how I moved it. This thing was heavy. Oh, actually, quickly, let's check this cherry out. This cherry was putting on tons of flowers, and I was curious if it would set fruit this year. And it doesn't look like this one will. But if I look over at that one, let's go take a walk. We'll take a quick detour. We'll check the cherries out. And we'll pop down in here, this lower swale here. This is just another wilder swale that I did. This one here is loaded. So this is going to be a very fun year for me. This is the first year this one's ever put on any fruit. And this one is a sweet as well. I believe this one's a bang. And sweet need certain pollination requirements. They need another cherry tree to pollinate with. Sours are a little easier. They do themselves. But sweets, you need to get the pollination right. So that's a nice little feedback loop that this year we got the pollination right. And here is huscaps. Here is hazelnuts. Sometimes my brain thinks one thing and says another. Some kind of dyslexia, maybe. So we've got hazelnuts. You see them? They're gonna come. So sometimes pollination with hazelnuts are also a bit tough to get because it's all wind pollinated. They should really be planted in blocks. So if you have hazelnuts, make sure you're planting them in blocks, not in rows. So we've got a hazelnut here, and we kind of try to block them a little bit. And behind me, just quickly spin. Behind me we've got the Jerusalem artichoke patch, and that's why we added these hazelberts and filberts and other varieties in here like that. Kind of cleared space out for them because we want them in a big block with the other hazelnuts. So what's going on here? All right, so here's the coop, and everyone knows that wood prices have gone up, you know, quite a bit. It's gone up actually threefold where we are. And just when I priced the materials out for how much I would have to pay to build this with new material, it was just so expensive. And then I started looking at picking up recycled materials, making it with, you know, skids and pallets. And you know what? I thought, my wife is on board with chickens. I want to give her something that looks really nice. You know, and as much as I love the rustic look of something that's been produced secondhand, because there's just so much story and amazingness that goes with that. At the same time, you know, I appreciate that not everyone has my aesthetic, and I thought we'll get something that looks really nice. So there's a local guy who actually makes these chicken coops, and with the way that the economy's going, you know, with people losing their jobs, I thought it's not the worst thing in the world to support someone who does this and support someone local. So we actually priced out the wood and all the materials how we wanted to make it, and he actually made it cheaper than I could with the materials that I would have had to buy. So to me it was, you know, obvious that we should go with him. So this was actually made by someone local, and then they brought it over here and they basically dropped it off here, and then I had to move it under where I wanted with the trellis, underneath the grape trellis here, because I want to plant all around it, and I kind of want to turn this into like a chicken zoo at the back where they can roam around eventually. It won't happen this year, but I can extend out all of these trellises over top, and then I can have them, you know, where they can run around and browse, very, very much like Edible Acres setup. You know, he's one of my favorite permaculturists. If you don't know who Edible Acres is, go subscribe to his channel and watch his stuff. He's probably my biggest inspiration. So what I wanted to do is kind of create something like his here, and I really needed to get that underneath the trellis. So we did it like the Egyptians used to move the pyramids, with logs. So we'd put the chicken coop, well, not we, I put the chicken coop under, you know, wedged it up, put it underneath a log, slid a log in, and then did this, put a log behind it, and then lifted it up. And if I could get it up high enough, gravity would just kind of roll it along the log a little bit, and I could lean into it as I lifted this up, and I could just move it an inch, and then move it an inch, and move it an inch, slide a new log under. So we moved it like that, and this thing is heavy, let me tell you that. But we got it in, and then we got to the point where if I got another log underneath and had logs under there, it popped it up high enough that it actually got in the way of all of these cross members for the supporting roof that all these grapes are on. Check out the grapes. So tons of grapes coming this year. Now grapes are something that chickens can eat, but they have to eat in moderation. So we do fully understand that. There's going to be lots of cover though, and that'll kind of keep them a little protected from predators who might want to dive bomb in here. They may not do that through, you know, they might do that through this. Probably not, even though they might try to, you know, land and then pop down though. They're less likely to do it through something like this. And then we can always also throw hardware cloth over the top of this, which we might do. But we basically ran into some of these cross members, right? And I couldn't get it further in. So this is about as far in as we can get. That's about as far in as I wanted, because I do want to put some kind of fencing up here with a gate, and then I can keep them, you know, contained where they can run in a contained area, because a lot of people lose chickens here to predation. My sister actually, up at Barn Boots and Country Roots, another great YouTube channel to check out if you're into homesteading. She does a lot of animal stuff. She just lost a bunch of chickens in her coop. Something got in. So we want to take their lessons learned and try to incorporate that. We're going to probably extend this hardware cloth out and roll it across the ground a bit. Predators tend to come right up to the fence and try to dig under, and they don't always, my understanding, you can tell me, I'm sure they do sometimes, they don't always know to go back further. They just dig down and run into that. So we'll run it a couple feet anyways, and that'll prevent underground digging. The other thing we could do is fence underneath, but that might get in the way of shoveling out their deep litter method wood chips and ground in there that we're going to use. So we'll try to avoid that. We'll try to just, you know, extend that out a little bit, and then eventually, long term, you know, the cost of materials right now is being a little prohibitive to what I want to do for this project, but long term I want to extend out this, you know, gated in section that they're going to live in, and extend it out further and further and further, and then turn it into kind of like a little chicken run, kind of like what Edible Acres has. And I'll probably free range them a little bit. I'll let them out and let them run around, but I do want to make sure that I'm always out here when they're doing that, because we just have so many predators. And specifically the way that I plant, we get lots of wildlife. You guys know that. So I do want to really make sure that my desires to have chickens live a wonderful natural chicken life of browse and forage doesn't also single-handedly contribute them to leading a natural chicken life of being a delicious snack for something. So anyways, this is a quick little update of the chicken coop. Maybe I should show you a little bit of the chicken coop. So we've got these nice vents built in. And this was one other nice thing about using someone else is that, oh, he's got blocking in here. He's actually got them screwed shut, probably for transport, so I'll have to take that out. Won't be able to show you that. Anyways, the vent's open. You can probably picture that. One of the nice things about using someone else is that they've done it so many times. They have a lot of what we call in the nuclear industry OPEX, so a lot of operating experience, a lot of lessons that they've already learned themselves. Here's the actual coop itself. So we'll fill this with wood chips, of course, and we still have to install some perches. So we'll install perches in there. There's the vents, and there's some OPEX probably. Everyone can probably figure out what that is that stuff like raccoons have no problem climbing up the side of a coop and getting in up through the vents. So, you know, you think it's okay up here, but absolutely not. Raccoons are some wily creatures and they'll get in. Here's the nesting boxes. So looking pretty good. Quite a lot of nesting boxes. And then the run. So for now, for the very, very short term, we'll probably just run them in this run and we'll do deep litter method and just get the chickens established and going. And then we'll slowly expand out how far they can go. Well, I was going to open this, but this seems like it is in hard. I took a wood chip to try to pry it, but I'll have to get a hammer or a screwdriver, tap that out. It's pretty tight there. Probably got moved from during the moving transport and whatever I did with it. So there's the door, and then we're going to rig up an automatic opener on that door as well. Sorry for the focus there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. We wanted to make sure we got 1-inch hardware cloth on the outsides of this instead of chicken wire, because raccoons will literally reach through chicken wire with their grubby little hands and just break the necks of the chickens. So definitely, if you're building out a run, consider doing 1-inch hardware cloth instead of chicken wire. Chicken wire is kind of the more of a general overall fencing in for chickens and not a predator proof. It's meant for keeping chickens in place, not for keeping chickens out or predators out. Check out the kiwi popping up over these trellises. So I talked about kiwi yesterday. In the video I filmed yesterday, this video might come out a few days later, but here's the kiwi popping up, and we've got raspberries that are setting fruit. So this is my goal here, is I want to get lots of browse for the chickens that they can peck at. I can run the kiwi through the chicken cage for this year, for next year when they can come out into here. Hopefully I can get that set up by then. Then they can just free browse stuff, and I'll give all of this stuff a year that they can really grow and get established root systems before the chickens come pecking and pecking and pecking and pecking. And what I'll probably do is plant a bunch of comfrey in here to help, you know, protect the roots from scratching, pecking chickens. And we'll try to get as much as we can planted in here to protect from that, because I have heard that chickens really want to, you know, scratch and damage up all the root systems of pretty much everything. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the update. I think it's long enough, and just updating you on a few things all at once. The grapes have really crawled across into this trellis and have taken over, which is wonderful to see. And we're going to get such a ridiculous amount of grapes this year. It's going to be really fun. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you have a bunch of things that you can look forward to this season.